Well, good morning and welcome to Business Insights, an online festival for business and innovation. And we have the pleasure of kickstarting the programme of events today. Welcome to the panel, who I will introduce in a moment. And thank you to those who are joining us online. My name is Stuart Emerson. I'm Director of Business Development at Hartpury University and College in Gloucestershire in the southwest of England. Hartpury is one of the UK's leading specialist educational providers in agriculture, animal, equine, sport and veterinary nursing. We're home to 4,000 university and college level students studying degrees, A-levels, diplomas, as well as undertaking cutting edge industry research. Do take a look at our website for more details. So, Gloucestershire, a growth county for tech innovation, and the topic of conversation for this session. The tech industry is recognised as a huge global opportunity and one that Gloucestershire is keen to seize. It's expected that there will be a tripling of demand for tech-related goods and services over the next decade. Wireless innovation, smarter cities, smarter cars, data centres, augmented reality, healthcare and education are key areas of growth. Part of this opportunity is to grow jobs for the future, cross-generational jobs and careers that improve how we work, live and play. UK tech employment grew by 40% in the last 2 years and now accounts for almost 10% of the national workforce, with nearly 3 million jobs created. Gloucestershire already has a world-class pedigree when it comes to tech. It's fantastically well placed to harness the opportunity with a number of key assets, the most obvious being GCHQ and the resulting cyber tech cluster. It's also part of the three counties, Herefordshire, Worcestershire and Gloucestershire. And taken together, they really do present a formidable offer when we appreciate the cyber cluster in Malvern and the newly developed quarter in Hereford. Today, we're going to explore how projects in Gloucestershire are pivotal to laying the foundation for the county to become an exemplar, a growth tech county. We'll consider lessons from other parts of the country and what the county needs to do to maximise these opportunities. Retain and attract talent is really important, as well as ensuring how growth is sustainable and inclusive. I'm joined today by a panel covering cyber tech, AGRI-tech and fintech. I'd like to start by welcoming the panel and asking them all to introduce themselves before we dive into questions. So if we start with Peter, would you like to introduce yourself, your role and your background?
Morning, Stuart. Morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Peter Langley-Smith. I'm a development director at Reef Group. Reef Group are regeneration specialists and developers, and we are focused, and the purpose of Reef being on the call is in regard to the Forum, which is a mixed-use development in Gloucester City Centre.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peter. We were expecting to be joined by Tom Beasley of Active Gloucestershire, but sadly it looks like he's may have contracted coronavirus, hence why this call is online, of course. So we wish Tom a speedy recovery. And Vicky, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yes, good morning. My name's Vicky Hunter. I'm the Entrepreneur Engagement Manager for the Southwest for Tech Nation, which is a bit of a mouthful, I apologise. We just call ourselves EAMS internally, and there is an EAM for every region across the UK. Tech Nation exists to support tech founders of startups and scale-ups across the country and make the UK the best place to be growing a business. So it's a real pleasure to be here as part of the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Vicky. Reid.
Hi, I'm Reid Darby. I'm the Innovation Lead for the Cyber Centre project, part of Cheltenham Borough Council. So my role really is to stimulate the ecosystem and to be part of this amazing new development as part of Golden Valley. And we're going to make Cheltenham and Gloucestershire the cyber capital of the UK.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Reid. Richard.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Richard Holling, and the reason I'm here is to talk about fintech, which is a very broad subject, and my background is 30 years in IT and financial services. So.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Richard. And last but not least is a colleague of mine at Hartpury, Ben Thompson.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, Ben Thompson. I manage the new Hartpury AGRI-tech Centre located and recently established earlier this year, looking primarily an industry-facing complex, looking to improve access to the latest technology and innovation for farmers of the current and future generation through practical demonstration, technical knowledge exchange, workshops, training and courses, as well as just improving that connection between the innovators and developing companies and those commercial users.
Fantastic. So, welcome to the panel and thank you for joining us this morning. So what I propose to do is that we'll ask each panelist a couple of questions to set the scene and offer insight from their particular perspective. And then panelists should feel free to add or expand on responses. And then we'll have some supplementary questions and time for us to explore other areas that can contribute to this agenda. So, Peter, starting with you and the work that's taking place at the forum, a really exciting and innovative project. How do you see the forum contributing to the growth of tech in Gloucestershire?
Well, Stuart, I guess the point is that Gloucestershire already has a very established tech industry, and that's the reason for us all being on the call today. Obviously, the investment in that sector is growing as a result of COVID, the fourth industrial revolution, and a number of other external factors. But to truly allow that industry to grow, it is all about people in our view. It is about people, and it is about attracting the best people and more specifically talent. And to attract talent, to attract the best people, we believe you need to deliver high quality places where those people will want to be, where they'll want to spend time, where they want to work, where they want to dwell, to socialise, to stay, etc. And to that end, the forum will provide a mix of uses, and that will range from 4-star hotels, very flexible office space, gym uses, co-working lounge, high quality public realm, all of which will be highly connected to create a new urban place, and this place where we want people to prosper. So if we want people to stay in the county, if we want people to come here, if we want to retain and attract the best talent and the inward investment that comes from that, we need to create the best places, and we believe the forum will do that.
Fantastic. No, I mean, it sounds like a fantastic project. I mean, why do you think it will be a success, and what really attracted you to Gloucester and Gloucestershire in particular?
Well, I think the success is sort of twofold, really, or the anticipated success, I should say. It's firstly the scheme itself and how the mix of uses do truly relate to each other. And as I say, we've got 450,000 square feet. That ranges from 130 to 150 bed hotel, a new car park, 100,000 square foot of offices, a gym, bicycle facilities, innovation space, co-working space, conferencing facilities, and it's all been designed very sensitively to optimize the uses themselves and the relationship of the uses too. So the gym has got independent access, so it can be independently accessed by the public, but it also serves as the bicycle park and the shower facilities for the offices. The hotel's directly linked to the car park and the offices. The co-working lounge, the conferencing facilities will create a real destination and another reason for occupiers and people to visit. The offices themselves are totally flexible. That we feel is important to respond to what is a very fast changing and evolving occupier place and market. And we've got to make sure that all those uses do complement each other, create this destination. But importantly, the scheme itself actually sits within Gloucester city centre, and that already offers so much. And I don't think we should be forgetting that. You've got a Premiership rugby team, you've got a renowned, sort of internationally renowned cathedral, you've got a regionally dominant outlet village, you've got a lot to celebrate in the region, and that's just in Gloucester itself, not the region wider. And I guess a couple of other things just to add. I think the scheme, we've been very conscious to design the scheme as efficiently as we can to really optimize the design, but to make it affordable. We think affordability is critical at individual and corporate level for all of the reasons that I'm sure we'll hear about this morning. But if I may, I think the forum and sort of the inward investment into Gloucester and Gloucestershire as a region is an absolute must. If I must say, it's absolutely almost an obligation on us. The region is blessed with this highly valuable, this growing, this very well-funded cluster, this tech and cyber cluster. It's got world-leading education institutes. It's got an abundance of young, very capable people. It would be a failure of us in the region and the place if we can't provide the environment for that talent pool to thrive and to prosper. And for that reason, we believe that the forum can sort of work alongside all of the work that is happening in the region and really complement and be a success.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you for that, Peter. I think that really helps set the scene of one key project in Gloucester. Of course, we're going to hear about some other projects from Reed, but we've got Cyber Central. We've got, as Peter's mentioned, the Forum in Gloucester, Digital Innovation Farm, Hartpury. We've got the Minster Innovation Scheme taking place in Cheltenham. The Applied Digital Skills Centre at Cirencester College, part of a recent successful LEP funding bid. So lots of projects that really feed into this discussion and this debate. We'll come on to some of the things that you mentioned there that I think are incredibly important around young people and keeping young people in the county. There's some quite worrying statistics about the number of young people that are planning to leave the county. So what can we do to prevent that? Affordability, I think, is really critical area, and attracting talent to the area as well. So thanks for that scene setter. Vicky, I wanted to bring you in next, because you offer, I guess, a broader perspective in terms of your role across the Southwest and seeing what is taking place in the region. What lessons can Gloucestershire learn from other hotspots across the Southwest?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant listening to what Peter's just had to say, because absolutely space and place is a really strong part of that. I want to take it back a step and say that in order for a place to really thrive, you've got to get your foundations correct. And the first thing I'd say, it's a word that's bounded around and used far too often, but it is super important, and that's collaboration. It's brilliant to hear about all of these different places, spaces, organizations, initiatives, but unless they are talking to each other, then it can be very, very difficult for anybody from outside to get in and to know what's happening. And I have a few examples. I think that Cornwall has been really great at collaborating. I went down there last summer, was hoping to go again this year. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked out. But I mentioned to a few people that I had connected with down there that I was going to come down. I would probably have to only be there for a day, because I was also going to Plymouth. I was also visiting Exeter, and they said, "Brilliant, we'll put on an event." And it was Software Cornwall and Launchpad, which is part of Falmouth University, that put on a pitching event so that I could go down there. I could really see all of the fantastic things that were happening down there. And I think I saw 25, 30 companies in one afternoon. I got to meet lots of people. They set up meetings with the ones I should specifically be talking to that was relevant to some of the programs we run at Tech Nation. And that sense of collaboration, the fact that they did that just for me, was amazing. And I know that they can do that all the time. They talk to one another. They understand the roles that they all play within the ecosystem, and they support that. And they're really founder first. So they're looking at how can they, as an ecosystem, support those founders. So I definitely think that's a really good thing. I'm also really proud of the Southwest. Obviously, I cover the whole region. So I talk to my colleagues in other regions a lot, and Tech Southwest, which I believe has a Gloucester representation, I think they're doing some really great things in pulling together a very varied region. And we've got built up urban areas like Bristol, but then, we've got the likes of the left involved for the heart of the Southwest, which is very rural. So very different challenges, but they're talking to each other, which I just think is brilliant, because when a global pandemic comes along and everybody retreats to their family homes or whatever, all of a sudden business is done in a very different way and geography is less important. So it's great that the Southwest feels connected in that regard. I think another really important thing is selling the sizzle. So I don't think they'll mind me sharing this, but if you go on Twitter and look up Bristol Calling, they also have a website. I wasn't aware until long after I'd moved to Bristol that that's actually powered by the tech sector in Bristol. And it really covers all of that other stuff. So you've got Tech Spark that's talking about technology and all of the opportunities for tech people. But Bristol Calling is talking about the festivals that's going on, the arts and entertainment, the nice places to live, those kind of things, which of course, as individual human beings, we need all of that. We need to look at our careers and our opportunities within tech, but we also want to know that if we're going to move to an area, as I did, that there's going to be nice things to do on the weekend, there's going to be ways to meet people and make friends, there's going to be things for the kids to do, whatever it is. So a bit of PR, I think. It's all well and good having loads of fantastic tech things going on, but if nobody on the outside can see that, then you're not going to be on the map. And I would say Gloucester and Gloucestershire is an area that I still feel I haven't really tapped into, whereas it's been very easy for me to tap into Exeter, Cornwall, Bristol and Bath, even Swindon now as well, but maybe that's because it's so close on the train. But I know that there's lots going on in terms of cyber and agri-tech, and I'm excited to hear about fintech as well, but it's not something that comes up in conversations through our reporting that we do at Tech Nation, of which we do a lot. So how do we put Gloucester on the map? I think do some PR, sell, and make sure that it's not just those strengths that you're talking about, but also all those other things that are going to appeal to people. And my final thing is to know your strengths, and I think that's something that Gloucester and Gloucestershire really do know, much more than other areas. I think the Southwest as a whole has really struggled. Not struggled, that's the wrong word. It's been part of the rhetoric, like, do we need as a region to have a one or two defining strengths? And again, I think we have so many varied strengths, whether it's, sort of net zero green technologies, which seem to be very strong. We've got a lot of sea, we've got a lot of wind, we've got a lot of rural area. So we're able to do those marine technologies, agri-tech, all those kind of things. But fintech, that's really keeps coming up time and time again. Do we need to have those strengths as a region? I'm not sure that we do, but I think as the sort of more micro clusters, it's really good to know your strengths, because then you're unified and you can build on that. So those would be my kind of three things: collaborate, sell the sizzle, and know your strengths.
Fantastic. And I think Gloucestershire possibly does need to shout a little bit louder about its successes. It can be quite a humble and incredibly hardworking county. And you've just reminded me of a campaign that I came across in Pittsburgh, across the pond, that ran a incredibly successful PR campaign that I think I've mentioned to Peter in a previous conversation, that I thought was incredibly clever in how it captured succinctly a number of opportunities in that particular part of America. And it was these three lines. It said, own a home, work in tech, move to Pittsburgh. And I think that simplicity is fantastic, because what you have in those three sentences is own a home, aspiration, affordability, work in tech, future facing jobs, and then a call to action. Actually come here, things are happening. And perhaps that's one of the takeaways from this call. Now, there is some great work across the board in Gloucester in terms of promoting the things that we do, but perhaps there's a wider piece of work there in terms of promotion. You touched on the role of the founder there before I bring Reid in. The role of the founder is an interesting one. Why are they so important, and the community that supports them so important?
Yes, I'm definitely biased. I work very closely with founders across the region, and they're kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning, because I find people with ideas and innovative thinking that's going to make a difference to the world. I find that very, very exciting and inspiring. The importance of those founders is, if you're the sort of founder that just wants everything laid out on a plate, you're probably not going to be very good at running a business. Entrepreneurs tend to be people who know how to hunt out the solutions that they need, and if they can't find them, hustle to make sure that they exist. So I believe that from a founder's responsibility, the founders in the region need to be looking for what they need, and if they can't find it, they need to be asking, and again, they need to be shouting loudly about what they need, because it can happen that a lot of money gets poured into physical space or government initiatives, or trying to set up communities with the wrong people, with the wrong information about what is needed, and nothing comes out of it. But if those people are all listening to the founders, what they need, and questioning them on it, of course, because 9 times out of 10, if you ask a founder just off the bat, what is it you need, investment's going to be the top thing there. Whereas maybe they also need more events, maybe they need introduction to mentors, or those sorts of things that are actually going to build a community. So yes, founders very much need to be a part at the grassroots level of any tech community, because they're the ones that are going to grow the businesses. They're the ones that are going to put in far too many hours and lose sleep and money and relationships and all sorts over this. And the community needs to listen, the ecosystem. So the likes of all of us, we need to be really listening. What is it that these founders are saying to us? And is that changing? Because of course, as the economy changes, as global pandemics come in, those things can change. And often what they need is something very simple. So it might be that they're feeling isolated because we're in lockdown, or they feel isolated because they aren't cyber technology or an AGRI-tech. And they actually need to be connected with the med techs or the well-being tech, whatever it is. So making sure that there is an infrastructure that can really listen to founders, and that founders, it's on them to push to find the door to get in. And it's also on those more seasoned founders, there's a responsibility to give back. If they found it hard opening the door and finding the resources they needed, then they need to understand that those coming behind them may also find it difficult. So yes, founders have to keep giving.
That's great, and I think that's one thing I've certainly picked up from the work that's taking place in the forum, is how they are looking to harness that wider community, and in fact the third sector founders, all the key stakeholders. I think that's working really well. Reid, you're heavily involved in that sort of cyber ecosystem and innovation, as you mentioned there. Why does Gloucestershire have the largest concentration of cyber technology companies in the UK outside of London, and what sort of opportunities do you see coming along in the next few years?
I mean, it's sort of an enigma to those outside, but to those of us that have been part of the community for years, it makes perfect sense. And I think we haven't really shouted about it. I mean, my background, I've been cyber security, cyber tech for most of my adult career, and I've lived in the local area for quite a while. And I got involved in Cyber Central, the project, about a year ago. Started to work with colleagues to do some research, and it is so incredible what we have under the covers. And really, what it goes back to, I would say, is that GCHQ has been in the local area for over 60 years. So that's a lot of people. We've talked about people being at the heart of this. So there's a lot of people that have been involved in that sort of security, government security focus. But it's not just been the government. What has grown up over really the last sort of couple of decades in particular is a whole set of businesses and organisations to support them, but also to work in broader ways. So, as the council, we commissioned an economic study last year by Hartpury University, and that's where the figures came out. Knowing what to look for, what we found was that in Gloucestershire, we have 6 times the density of cybersecurity businesses compared to the national average. And in Cheltenham, we have 11 times. And it really goes back to that sort of concentration around GTHQ. And when we look at that, we've got small companies, SMEs, specialists, we've got some of the big global tech companies in the world, and they are based locally in Gloucestershire. But we've also got a lot of academic expertise, so the local universities and further education organisations, and then there's the network beyond. So it's great having Vicky on the call. We are actually part of this Western Gateway construct. And it's not that far to come to Cheltenham, Vicky. If you come on the train, it's half an hour. It's quicker to get from Cheltenham to Bristol than it is to go from San Francisco to San Jose in the valley. Yeah? And it's the same distance. And we need to start thinking about ourselves as a region as well as locality. So in terms of that question, really, that's really where that comes from. But in terms of where the future's going in sort of cyber tech, I think there's a lot of misnomers that you have to be really good at maths or really good at sort of technology to get into the sector. No, absolutely, we need some of the best mathematicians, engineers, technologists in the world, and we have quite a few in the local area. But actually, it's also about people. It's about behavioural science. It's about design. At the NCSC, they've been running a cyber security accelerator for the last few years locally in Cheltenham, and I was chatting to one of the companies, one of the alumni that called NetToken, and Simon Etta, who's the co-founder. She's a designer. Yeah, I mean, her background is designing yachts, and she got into the sector because she wanted to help people be safe online, and she came from not a tech background. And I believe that as we sort of look to grow the ecosystem, we've got the opportunity to bring in people other than technologists to supplement and to grow businesses that have people at heart. And they want to serve people and make the UK a safe place to work and to do business. So I mean, and the second part of the question really was about how can people get involved? I mean, there's lots of opportunities, and the market as well as the government, local and national level, have really been working hard to try and fix some of the challenges there around. We talk about talent. How do you get into the sector? And there's a lot of work on apprenticeships. I mean, you can see in Glasgow, they've got a really great apprenticeship scheme that they're kicking off in cybersecurity. University of Gloucestershire have some great courses there. And then, more broadly, we've got at Berkeley, there's some great stuff happening there. And then further afield in Bristol and Bath and South Wales and so on. So there's plenty of opportunities to get in to cybersecurity. And in fact, I just noticed the other day that Gloucestershire have launched a website on skills, a skills portal. Yes. And then I should mention also CyNAM. So at the heart of the ecosystem is the cyber community, and this is the Cheltenham Cyber. It's called CyNAM, but really it represents a sort of broader Gloucestershire piece. And you've got there's over 1,000 people involved in that. We regularly get maybe 750 people on the live stream now for online events, and there's a lot of people locally and regionally, but also nationally and internationally. So going back to Vicky's point about marketing, we are getting better at marketing, and as people and organisations start to realise what we have, I think we'll start to see that mobilise, and that will be not just for the benefit of the local and regional folks, but this is a national asset that we have, and something that can be international. And just one thing to finish my sort of segment on, I'm sitting in Hub 8 today, which is the sort of co-working space built around the cyber community just in the last year, and it's an incredible place to work because you're right at the heart of the sector. But what's really interesting is how the companies that you talk to, they're all hiring in the cyber sector, and that's counterintuitive given we're going through a global pandemic. So something's going on in our sector, and I don't think that's just a blip. I think we've got something that is going to be building for the future. It will help us to be resilient and to grow, and there are lots of jobs that we believe that will come to the area as a result of what we're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's really good. And I think one of the key issues you identified there was inclusive growth, really, and how we can attract a wide diversity of entrants to this market. A few years ago, I was lucky to visit a place called the Camp in Marseille in the south of France. And what I thought was really special about that particular institution was it really did draw on every sector, from engineers to poets to artists to designers to techies. And I thought that what that results in is really not missing out on talent, and everyone has a role and a contribution to play in this agenda. So okay, great, thank you for that. Rich,
can I just pick up on that very quickly? So one of the things we're looking to do is unpack the cyber narrative and look at how do we work with organizations like Cheltenham Festivals and others to really look at the creative side of things. So I think, we for too long it's been focused solely on tech, and I believe this will be part of the way that we get into a more diverse field.
Yeah, great. And as we know, cyber underpins every sector ultimately as well. So that sounds really encouraging. Richard, can I bring you in, and could you just talk a little bit about the role fintech can play in the growth of Gloucestershire, and perhaps what we can do to create more opportunities to allow fintech to thrive?
Yeah, okay. So I think when people talk about fintech, they quite often think about things like Revolut, Monzo, Starling Bank, and those sort of those companies. So they're all basically just traditional banks with a flash card, not really worth talking about. So at least one of them will go bust within the next 12 months, I'm pretty sure. So let's actually talk about stuff that matters in people's lives, because there's great opportunities in every county around the UK, and Gloucestershire's no different. You don't have to be in London, the financial centre, to be working in fintech. And I'll give you the reason for that. And it's possibly something that everybody can talk about, is that, and I think readers also said this, technology is not the issue. I've been working in technology for 30 years, and tech changes, but actually the fundamentals don't change, which is, if you've identified a real problem as opposed to a solution looking for a problem, then you'll make money. So here's a good example. You've talked about the rising price. I think you've mentioned the rising prices of houses in Gloucestershire, and how difficult it is for young people to buy a home. So somebody down in Bristol had a bright idea, and they've created a business called Stepladder. And this is a leading edge fintech, although you probably wouldn't think about it because it's a really simple idea. You basically get 24 people together. You know that those 24 people are going to take 2 years to save their deposit for their house. They're all going to commit to save £200 or whatever it is. Let's say it's £200 a month towards their house. So that's about just short of £5,000. Well, that's not going to buy your house, is it? Let's say it was 500 quid a month that they've committed to save for their deposit. So now that's going to take them all 2 years to save their deposit. But what Stepladder has done is brought them all together, and everybody contributes 500 quid in the first month. But after the first month, one of them gets all the money. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have to continue contributing 500 quid a month, but it means one of them has now got the deposit. In the second month, the same thing happens. One person's drawn at random, and the second person gets all the money they need for the deposit. So what you've done there is create a system where basically, out of the 24 people, 23 people will be able to buy their house earlier than they would have done if they hadn't been cooperating. Now, the actual idea behind that, could have come from anywhere, but basically what it's doing is solving a problem, which is young people find it difficult to find a deposit. So, my message to anybody who's considering financial services as a market sector is actually to think of a real live problem, and then talk to people like myself, Reed, Ben, Vicky, Peter, you, Stuart, about the technology, and actually try to make it happen. And it's innovations like Stepladder that are actually going to make a difference to people's lives, not just a fancy piece of plastic that happens to be pink or black. That's no real difference from having a Barclay card. Yeah. And Gloucestershire's ideally positioned because it's actually quite close to some so important financial services hubs. We've got Cardiff and Newport, Bristol, all those places, are full of tech companies and financial services companies. And then, as you've already said, you've got the whole cyber community, and that's really trust and unique, being able to identify people, having unique IDs for them or trusted identification is a big thing in financial services.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Richard. That was a really nice example there, perhaps of what people wouldn't necessarily think of, how fintech can impact on some of the challenges in communities in Gloucestershire, the Southwest, and nationally. Ben, can I bring you in before we open the conversation out into some other questions? There's a lot going on at Hartpury in terms of AGRI-tech. And there was a recent announcement with regards to the Digital Innovation Farm, which will be supporting SMEs to develop new products and services in the agri-tech sector. But what role can technology play in the future of food production?
I mean, to talk quite briefly about agri-tech and also its backstory is that, I mean, really, depending on your generation, agri-tech isn't new. It's been around for many years. You could argue that an enhanced machinery or tractors in the mid-19th century was agri-tech. But we're now seeing that hit the news and press releases recently because of the mass influx of now digital technologies, which is really what's posed, sort of prodded Hartpury into generating the Digital Innovation Farm vision, in that we're having now a mass influx of digital solutions. I think now, to paint a picture of where I think agri-tech solutions will go, ways in which they'll improve the industry, is across three areas, which I think is including provenance, production, and also provision. Now, to talk a bit about provenance for the ever curious consumer, of which all on this panel we are, we're all food consumers, and rightly so. In recent times, we're highlighted as a key industry in agriculture. And I think in the provenance area, we're now seeing a lot of businesses, small, medium-sized businesses in Gloucestershire, adopt new technologies to allow consumers more access to local produce, higher standard produce potentially, and know a bit more about food production in that area. So it's definitely a key driver in that area going forwards. I think production, how we build and improve efficiency on farm, and that's specifically what the Hartpury Agri-Tech Centre is focused on those productive on-farm technologies there to improve efficiency, whether that's management software, sensors, etc. I think there's a lot more to come in that area, and it's certainly an exciting area to be developed. And also provision. I think now adding to the same piece of, for the area of ever curious consumer, of knowing where their food comes from, what standards that food is produced under, to improve that food security, not just on farm, but throughout the supply chain, throughout processing, etc. There's a lot more technology to come in improving that security, and obviously providing data to back that up to ensure that it's being produced sustainable, which I can think that can highlight Gloucestershire as an agriculturally prominent county, but also UK production as well, which we're seeing pushed in local government as well. So
good stuff. And how is Gloucestershire more broadly supporting the agri-tech companies in innovation? I mean, I mentioned the Digital Innovation Farm there, but what's going on? How are we supporting that agri-tech community?
I think just from looking at the panel today, there's a lot of expertise that's operating in and out of Gloucestershire, which should be of access to anyone coming from an idea all the way to an established business. I think Gloucestershire is rich in expertise, and also more so, as I mentioned, in agriculture industry. 74% of the land area in Gloucestershire, I think, is farmed commercially by farm holding. That's a huge resource. that's available to agri-tech entrepreneurs. So I think jumping on Richard's point about creating a solution to solve a real world problem. And I think that is having that market insight and having that access to resources, farms, interest, knowledge, feedback is definitely what's needed.
Looks like Ben's just summarized and ended what he was about to say there. So while he's frozen and comes back, we'll broaden out the discussion after. So Ben, you're back. I think you're reaching a crescendo there, but do you want to just finish off what you were saying?
Not aware where I left off, but I think there's a lot of areas in which people need to sort of delve into, I think, and collaborate with other areas, whether it's Vicky looking at, external cross collaboration, Reed looking at cybersecurity, or just in-depth market insight, like Richard mentioned, and creating a solution to solve a real world problem, really.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben. And of course, that's Hartpury as a applied learning centre is exactly that. We look to solve real world problems. And I think that's one of the assets of Gloucester. We're not always necessarily looking at sort of 30, 40 years down the line, albeit that's incredibly important, but we're looking to drive productivity into the economy now and in the near future. So just to open the conversation up a little bit for this last kind of 15, 20 minutes, I wanted to briefly touch on COVID. It'd be remiss of me not to consider the impact of COVID and the implications on some of this agenda and what we've discussed. Certainly there are challenges and opportunities, and I'm thinking, Peter, in terms of the forum, there's a lot of people working from home at the moment. Yes, we've got a vaccine. There's the co-working space in Cheltenham. Are they threats? Are they opportunities? But also, I guess, the opportunity for and to engage young people who we know it's going to be a challenging time over the next 6 to 12 months, certainly, if not longer, in terms of bringing them into this high growth sector where we know jobs will be created. Peter or Reed, anyone want to come back on that?
I'll come in first, if that's okay. So absolutely, I think it is a major issue. What I've seen is that counterintuitively, there have been opportunities in the sector as a result of COVID and working from home. For example, so somebody I met actually in Hub 8 before this lockdown, he spent most of his time working for a large tech company in London, but he was based in Cheltenham, and so he was working from home and he wanted somewhere else to work, and he came to Hub 8. So I met him here, and we've been doing some actually interesting work together. I think sort of as we go beyond COVID, which we will hopefully in the next sort of few months and year, I think the work patterns will change. People will have a taste for working home some of the time, but will also want to use office space in different ways. And I think that's where things like co-working will be really important. This is about serendipity. It's about people. Where does innovation come from? It comes from people bumping into each other, having conversations, exploring problems, having ideas, and then get passionate about doing something about it. And that's quite difficult to do digitally all the time. We're still learning how to do that. But I think, and when we look at Gloucestershire, what an amazing place to live and work. When we think about, so our project is part of the Golden Valley development. We rebranded that to include Cyber Central because actually what we're building is something for the future that includes a place to work, a place to live, and a place to play as well. So this is about looking at Gloucestershire as an incredible place to live and work and to live. So I think certainly for the tech sector, it's I think it's resilient and robust, but we've got to do more to help those that are really struggling. Whether that's the retail sector or other sectors that are really struggling because of the issue with jobs. But I think it's going to be a mixed bag, but I think our sort of county has a lot to offer. People won't want to go into London and commute as much, so they can work and live locally in Gloucestershire.
Okay, great. And we've seen, haven't we, a growth in the number of people looking to relocate outside of London, and certainly that feels like an opportunity for places like Gloucestershire to attract talent. Peter, I don't know if you wanted to just dip in there in terms of, it certainly in many respects feels like just as much of an opportunity. I mean, for those of us who have been working at home and crave those conversations and those creative discussions to problem solve, it almost feels like we have learned just how valuable some of those co-working spaces are, and of course the fact that we are social animals.
No, I'd second everything you and Reid have said. I think my view and Reef's view is that the loser from COVID is probably London. London is going to get right-sized, and correctly so. It needed to probably happen, which is the region's opportunity indirectly, or as a sort of direct impact from that. The challenge for us as creators of places is to make sure those places are appropriate and relevant and continue to be so. And that can be as simple as making sure that floors can be split in a number of different ways, making sure that people have got separate entrances, making sure that the hotel can cater for uses that are beyond just traditional corporate uses. It's sort of more of a physical challenge that our sort of mixed use developers were having to get more and more savvy with. But I see the London right-sizing thing as an amazing opportunity for the regions. It's probably going to do Boris's levelling up for him, in fact.
Okay, great. So there are, Vicky's touched on some of the reasons that particular places have become hotspots. I think one of the other key areas and that can contribute to a place becoming a hotspot is strong academic support. So I'm here obviously representing Hartpury University and Hartpury College, but the government is driving this knowledge exchange agenda, again, rightly so, to bring together the business community with that academic expertise. And there are tech hotspots all over the world. So Silicon Valley, Reid touched on earlier, probably wouldn't have existed without Stanford University, for example. And I think when we look around some of the other places in the country, in the world, whether it's Tel Aviv, Maryland, Barcelona, partly why some of those places grew up is because of the government agencies that exist there, but also because of the kind of melting pot of academic institutions, government agencies, and then the entrepreneurs that Vicky mentioned. What do you think the lessons are there internationally, and what role can colleges and universities play to support this agenda? Do we need to be driving the skills agenda much faster and harder? As I mentioned, there's already been a great project identified at Cirencester College. Hartpury's doing great work in terms of AGRI-tech and actually sports tech and other areas. But what are the lessons internationally? And do you think colleges and universities, what's the role that they can play? Vicky, do you want to touch perhaps on some of the, I know you're focused on the Southwest and you're passionate about the Southwest, but are there any lessons to learn from some of the hotspots around the globe?
Well, look, I think that one thing, I don't know enough about this to get it right, but there are certain ways in which universities spinning out sort of PhD papers and in terms of ownership of ideas that is very different around the world. And I think in the UK, we're not very good at that. The universities really tightly squeeze onto these ideas that PhD students are working on, and then they graduate and they can't really run with these ideas and turn them into businesses as easily as in other places like the States. So there's certainly some institutional changes of our universities that we need to see happening. Another one that comes up time and time again is that the curriculum for IT students or for programmers and developers is just snail pace. Tech moves really fast, and actually what we should be teaching in our universities is a thirst for that knowledge, for keeping up to speed, for seeing what the new programming languages are and playing with them and learning them and self-teaching. Because yeah, if you're still learning C++, and then you get out into a job market where everyone's looking for Ruby on Rails and Python, then you're going to really struggle. There's a real disconnect. And the other thing I also hear time and time again is that people come out feeling, you know, maybe quite rightly entitled, that they've done their 3 years at university, they've got their first degree in IT, and that they should, you know, go into one of these high-paying jobs that they've heard all about, but actually have no real world experience of building products, of solving problems in a business landscape. So I think that universities, and they are starting to do this, we see this now a lot, but there's a brilliant company, it's actually led by students, called Atlas Studios down at Exeter University, where a bunch of the students have got together and said, right, well, we've got all these skills, but we're not really applying them. And they are solving the problem of the university not being able to give real world experience. They are offering a cheaper solution for anyone looking to build a tech product. I think Richard mentioned earlier, it's much better to have an idea for a problem and then try and find the tech. Well, these guys could build it for you. And they're also earning a bit of income, so it's solving a problem for the students themselves. So things like that are really good. They're still learning at the university, but they're also earning money and providing a service. So that kind of thing, that kind of innovative, how can you get people transitioning into work better? Good.
Can I come on top of that? So I think Alec is absolutely right. One of the things we've been looking at the idea of quadruple helix. This is sort of classic innovation theory, economic cluster theory. So you put together the academic sector with large tech, with government, with small businesses, and you do that knowledge exchange. I think the academic sector has a hero to play there, and I think there's 2 levels or 3 levels. There's the research end, which is what Vic talked about in terms of generating intellectual property and then exploiting that, and having sort of liberal IP regimes is really important. Then the skills agenda and particularly thinking further application. So again, looking at Boscol, UE, the way they're sort of really looking at the sort of in between A levels and sort of we used to call HNDs. So there's a key sort of talent pipeline there. And there's the civic place of the university. So I'll recall yesterday with Bristol Uni, they're really looking at how to reimagine themselves as a civic university for the city of Bristol and the broader region. Leadership place. So I think universities and higher education, further education have a real place to play, but also bringing them together and finding places, creating spaces that will enable that knowledge change to happen. We can build up trusted relationships, and whether that's like the forum, which looks amazing, a central and sort of the Mixed Innovation Exchange, we've got to find those places, and we can't wait for other people to do that. We have to be leaders to make that happen.
Great. Okay, so I'm conscious of time, and we've got about 5 minutes. It feels like we could probably explore and expand on this conversation over a good morning in a co-working space, no doubt. So there's the Prime Minister has announced the green industrial revolution and agenda today, and I think green tech is another huge opportunity for Gloucestershire, and we've got some fantastic businesses such as Ecotricity and others in the county who are leading the way on that agenda. And I think we've touched on how we can ensure that the Gloucestershire tech growth is inclusive. I think some of the lessons possibly from Bristol and other places actually are, and this is a point Tom would have made, is that some of the growth there is actually reinforced inequality. And I think, that we've seen a huge rise in housing prices there. And how do we ensure that we take the lessons from some of those other tech hotspots to ensure that we bake in a more equal growth agenda, I think is really important. But there's also, and you mentioned it earlier, Reid, there's the role of those, the Western Gateway, for example. The priorities there are very much driven around digital revolution, climate change, protecting nature, and tech growth. So the role of institutions is really important, but equally, Vicky mentioned earlier, we need this to be a grassroots agenda as well as the input from government and other key stakeholders. But if I, to summarize and bring this together, if each of you had to prioritize one area, and if I work my way around you, that Gloucestershire should focus on to enable Gloucestershire to become a growth county exemplar for tech innovation, what would that one thing be? If I start with Peter, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, I guess to really reiterate Vicky's point, my key word would be collaboration. I think we should all be humble enough to accept that the value of the region is far greater than the sum of its parts. We all have an obligation, a duty, wearing our various different hats to ensure that that region continues to thrive and provides opportunity for what is already a very exciting established growth sector. And really, whether that's through the physical, the digital, and all of our various different ways and warehouse and expertise, I think we all need to accept that collaboration and working together will benefit everyone.
Great. So collaboration. Vicky?
Wow, seeing as Peter's stolen collaboration, I'll introduce a new concept to the conversation. The idea of play. We sort of touch lightly on diversity and equality, and I think that if we look at the sectors we've talked about, the little girl in me wants to play with AGRI-tech because that sounds way more fun than cybersecurity. However, if you explain to me that you've got to do your risk assessment before you climb on the tractor, then I understand how all of these parts play together. So I think if we're looking to make sure that it's not just the white people, white privileged, mainly male people in the room, it's let's look at how we can open those doors through the collaboration going on in the region, and we can actually break down some of the barriers that maybe buzzwords like cyber technology create, and allow more people to come in and play within the sector, because then they'll get excited about it and then they'll be a part of it.
Great. Play. Okay. Reid?
So I think the word mission, and this is about, we can all have a mission as part of this initiative, and this is about making the world a better place to live and work. And that's run through all that we do, whether that's making money and getting jobs, solving problems, having a sense of purpose and mission will give leadership needs.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mission. Richard?
Well, I'd go back to what I think Peter said about collaboration, and I would say that Gloucestershire has an opportunity to focus on some things that are sort of almost unique to Gloucestershire, which is around cyber security, trusted ID, and then agriculture. Put those two things together and have providence around food and security around the supply chain and traceability around supply chain, and then sod it, throw that away and actually focus on equine and horses and racing on Cheltenham, and prove that case for being able to have secure ID in the horse racing world first, because that is where a lot of money is made, and then transfer that to cows and sheep. So that would be what. So I would actually play to your strengths rather than try to play in other people's fields. Do something that's unique to Cheltenham. I mean, that would be brilliant. Being able to trace the bloodlines through secure identity for thoroughbred horses, and then prove, with putting drug testing around horses and stuff like that. That would be, I think, pretty cool. You get a platform for that. But then, as I say, just going into food security, that traceability, they're the big issues that actually people care about, that would be unique to Gloucestershire.
Great, thank you for that. And there's lots of fantastic research taking place at Hartpury Equine Centre, and some of those areas you've touched on actually are very much at the front of students and academics' minds. And last but not least, Ben.
Yeah, probably my word, probably under the heading of collaboration as well, is flexibility. One of the biggest fears from operating or commercially operating in the tech industry is falling by the wayside, being overtaken by a competitor. Innovation is constantly evolving. So really, the most successful companies that I've certainly engaged with in the agri-tech sector are the ones that are flexible, the ones that want to encourage that collaboration, discuss with other sectors, discuss with other ideas, and openly say that their main purpose is to drive efficiency and productivity. And if you have that flexibility, then I think that as a county, Gloucestershire can be flexible as well. I think that will put us in good stead for the future as well, I think.
Fantastic. So, well, collaboration, mission, play, ultimately people, incredibly important. Well, look, I'd like to thank everyone for their input and expertise this morning. I've really enjoyed the discussion. As I said, I think we could go on for a lot longer, but I'll end with a quote that I came across whilst preparing for this discussion by Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, that reminds us of the central role of people in communities and that they have to play in this agenda. And he said, technology is nothing. What's important is that we have a faith in people, that they're basically good and smart, and if you give them the tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. Thank you all for taking part, and we look forward to Gloucestershire leading the way to becoming a beacon for tech growth and innovation in the UK and beyond. And finally, thank you to Business Insights for facilitating this discussion.